everybody, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to go over a financial planning strategy for an early retiree. We're going to cover how to blend together tax planning with health insurance expense planning. These are two major components of the financial plan for an early retiree, probably more important than for somebody who has kind of a traditional retirement. So I'm going to jump into a kind of a case study scenario and show you how to kind of set up the problem and think about how to approach this, and hopefully this will give you some good ideas as you think about your own early retirement situation of what things you should be thinking about or that you could possibly do in order to improve your overall financial situation. So let's jump into it. Okay, for this case study, we're going to look at a couple, Jordan and Susie. They're 50 and 45, and they have two children, a 10-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. They want to retire now and live abroad, and also, and then obviously, as an early retiree, they want to make sure that they're not running out of money. Now, because they have a family, obviously they have healthcare expenses. They want to make sure that they have great coverage and that they're not shortchanging themselves by retiring early. Now, looking out kind of over the course of their life, during their career, Jordan and Susie had very high income, so they're used to paying a lot in taxes. And if we look out into the future, since they've saved a lot in retirement accounts, if we don't proactively plan with their 401k and IRA accounts, they're probably going to have really high required minimum distributions that force them later on in life to pay taxes at a very high rate. And so we're looking at their first year of retirement and thinking, okay, is there anything that we can do to make sure that their healthcare expenses are met in a affordable, cost-effective way? And then is there anything we can proactively do in order to manage their taxes in the current year and then lower them in future years? So the first step that we do, that I like to do with a situation like this, is start with an income projection. So we're going to start with looking at those income items that you maybe don't have as much control over. So for example, Jordan and Susie, they have dividends and interest income that are coming in from their portfolio. And yeah, they could do things to reduce those or increase those, but the first step is I like to pull over what they had in dividends and interest from the previous year. They also have a rental property, so I'm taking last year's rental income to project for the current year. There hasn't been any increase in rent, no major changes in kind of expenses there, so just pulling that over. And already for the year, Jordan and Susie have had to sell some investments, and they've recognized some capital gains. So this is our starting point for income. And from here now, we can see what would be the impact if we added or reduced income and see if there's any kind of just low-hanging fruit planning opportunities. So let's look at their numbers and get into it. Okay, so here we are looking at their projection for 2024. And this column, we're going to go down it and just go through some of their tax items. Like I said, these are projection numbers. And we pulled them over from what they had last year from their portfolio and other income sources. The only thing we didn't pull over was their wages. They were working last year. Well, now that they're retiring, they're not going to have that income. So they had, as you can see, they had some interest from their savings and portfolio. They had some qualified dividends as well as just regular, ordinary dividends. They had to sell some investments, so they had about $35,000 already this year from long-term capital gains, and they have a rental property, so you can see that the taxable portion of their rental income flowing through onto their Schedule D here, or forgive me, their Schedule 1 here. So going down, you can see they have a total income of $85,000. So where does this put them as far as taxes for the year, federal taxes? Go down, you can see, all right, their tax bill is zero. So assuming that Jordan and Susie are able to spend down money from savings, they could just have, pay zero taxes, zero federal taxes for the year. Incidentally, I put in here, that this Jordan and Susie are from Oregon, and so you can see they have just over $5,000 of state taxes at the moment. Okay, so what I want to do is let's look at a chart here and map out, look at their income visually to see if there are any planning opportunities by adding income. Okay, so this table, or I should say this chart we're looking at, this is a visualization of this tax projection for 2024. So on the y-axis here, these are the federal income tax brackets, 2010. You can see the colors here. This purple represents non-refundable credits, or I should say, with a non-refundable credit, this is money if they don't have enough income, they're actually leaving money on the table. since they're non-refundable, they're not going to get this back if they don't use it. We have taxes from capital gains and qualified dividends, and then the light blue represents their ordinary income tax bracket. So you can see here, as we start on the x-axis right here, this is a representation of where they are today based on the projection we looked at before. So we had their, all those different income sources, and like we saw, they had a negative, or I should say they had $0. They didn't have a federal tax bill, and that's because although for ordinary income in there in the 10% bracket, this credit is in place, which is essentially completely eliminating their income. What's interesting is that if we, as it stands today, if we go along to here, you can see that if we were to add, as we move along to the right, this represents adding income to their to the projection. So if we were to add about $20,000 of income to their scenario, I should say, in other words, they could have an additional $20,000 of income and still be at a 0% tax rate. And that's because you can see this non-refundable child tax credit it's here at a negative, and it's a perfect mirror image of that federal tax rate and eliminating that tax bill. I'm going to show you a different chart so you can kind of visually see this in a different way. Okay, so now instead of looking at this in terms of their tax bracket, we're actually looking at the dollars that they would pay. So as we move along, this is at the same starting point as we were before with their tax projection. As we're adding income up to $20,000 of income, you can see their tax bracket has not changed at all. So, or I should say the amount that they owe. So we add income, and you can see there in black, kind of behind my little yellow highlight there, $0 of total taxes, even though we've added $20,000 of income. So this is kind of interesting. So right now, by just simply looking at the numbers and projecting them at the beginning of the year, we can see that there's definitely some low-hanging fruit for these early retirees. If they don't recognize any extra income, okay, great, they're going to have zero taxes, but there's a chance here to kind of harvest an additional $20,000 of income without impacting their federal taxes at all. So what does that mean? Well, what if we were to do something like harvest some capital gains, pay some, intentionally pay some capital gains now so that we have more tax-free income in the future? That's an option. Another option would be doing a Roth conversion. So taking money out of an IRA, moving it over into a Roth, paying the taxes, so that later on we can access that money tax-free. And so in this situation, it looks like we'd be able to add about $20,000 of Roth conversion from a federal tax standpoint, basically for free. So let's keep going along and see what would happen if we added some more. I'm going to go back to my other chart. Okay, now we're here back at the tax brackets. So we've moved along. We've added $20,000, kind of hypothetically. All right, we're still at a 0% tax rate. Now, as we keep going, you can see that we're in the 12%, this blue area here, taxes on ordinary income. They're at a 12% federal tax bracket. Now, from a planning standpoint, you might say, oh, wow, is 12% good or bad? Well, I think it's actually great, but it's all relative to, to your actual situation. So, Jordan and Susie, before they retired, they were in a much higher tax bracket and doing projections way out into the future, really, not doing projections, later on in retirement, their tax bracket's probably going to be quite a bit higher as well. So if we can proactively use up part of the 12% bracket, moving money from their IRA to their Roth, what that means is in the future, they'll have access to that money when they're in a higher tax bracket and be able to have lower taxes later on in retirement. Now, as we get to here, you can see this red bulge that kind of jumps up. So what this is once we get to a certain level of income, their qualified dividends and long-term capital gains become taxable. So you can see it jumps up 15%. So even though we're still in the 12% tax bracket, you can see that from a federal tax standpoint, they're really, it's really more like 12% for ordinary income plus the 15% capital gain and qualified dividend tax for a total, so every extra dollar of income we recognize at this point is costing us 27 cents in taxes for every dollar of income. So, instead of just using like a simple rule of thumb, like, oh, let's max out the 12% bracket, you can see in their case that kind of the sweet spot is maybe getting to adding, what is this number here? Maybe let's call it $35,000. So if we add $35,000 of Roth conversion, how does that impact their federal taxes? So let's take a look on the other table. All right, so looking at this from total tax standpoint, as we add $35,000 of additional income through a Roth conversion, their total federal tax bill here is $2,036. So pretty good deal. They're able to, They had dividends, capital gains, interest income, and now they can harvest $35,000 of Roth conversion, and they're within the 12% bracket. Total taxes at this point, $2,000. So pretty remarkable. So now that we've looked at kind of from an income tax planning standpoint, we've maybe found what I'd like to call kind of that sweet spot for taxes. Now let's go over and see how this income target, how this impacts their health insurance, and see if we can find kind of a nice optimization point between federal income tax and health insurance subsidy. I took their numbers and we came over here now. We're going to look at what would be their health insurance costs based on our target income. So ran the numbers, and it actually looks like we'd be able to do about $43,000, $45,000 of Roth conversion. It's important not to get too specific or kind of perfectly dialed in with these tax projections. We have to leave some kind of wiggle room for margin of error, and especially if you're doing this type of thing at the beginning of the year, there's always kind of the possibility that some tax things happen that are outside of your control. So we're going to use this as a projection of their income, that they could do about $45,000 worth of Roth conversion for a total income, modified adjusted gross income, of $98,000. So let's see what this would be, what their impact. So we'd be able to do Roth conversions of about $45,000, and let's take a look at how much they'd be paying in for health insurance based on this projected income of $98,000 per year. All right, so here we are this is for Portland is where I put this in. And for this family of four, we have a 50-year-old, 45-year-old, 10 and 12. We're looking at a monthly subsidy of $1,028 towards health insurance. So, okay, that sounds pretty nice. Let's look at some of the plans to get an idea of what that would actually mean. So the first plans that are going to show up are more of the high deductible plans. And this one here for the family of four would normally cost $1,189, but with this tax credit or with this subsidy for health insurance, they would be paying $161 a month for health insurance. So maybe let's look at some other plans, some maybe plans that have a higher monthly premium, but maybe coverage that's a little bit higher than the first one that we looked at. So I'm going to jump all the way to tab number 7, and we'll look at these health insurance plans. Okay, so we have the Providence, Oregon Standard Gold Plan Choice Network. This plan was, for a family of four with these ages, $2,076 a month. After the credit based on this income, it's $1,048 a month. So hopefully this example going through this case study was helpful. If when you're retiring early, just maybe to reiterate what I talked about before, you have a lot of flexibility usually with your income and what you recognize and what you don't recognize, and that plays right into how much you pay for health insurance or how much you don't pay. So in this case with Jordan and Susie, for their family, they were able to, by doing some planning at the beginning of the year, some projections, they were able to lock in about $48,000, like $48,000 of Roth conversion within the 12% bracket, and which is going to help them later on in retirement when they have required distributions way far out in the future, and they're going to have access to that money tax-free. It also, by doing this planning, we're able to dial in their health insurance subsidy and save them over $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year in health insurance costs. So hopefully this case study illustrates that with some planning ahead of time, as a early retiree, you can save a lot of money and put yourself in a much better financial situation. So hopefully this was helpful, and I'll catch you next time.